Let's talk about Title VI. Okay, so just as a backup to where we were at our system level policies. So we set this yesterday for our Gatorville system. And so if you remember, we defined the service area as just Alachua County. We have our Title VI poverty income thresholds, and those are derived from the Department of Health and Human Services policy thresholds for based on household size. So these are national data for the United States. We also have our Title VI policy parameters that were input relative to the transit system. So every transit agency generally will have their own versions of this. Some may be the same or similar, but they're very much can vary. So you would put whatever is relevant to your transit system into these policy parameters. So as I mentioned before, whenever we run a Title VI analysis or in a lot of other occasions, these are defaults that pop up. And we just want to make sure that theirs are correct when we're starting out. Okay, so in terms of Title VI tools and reporting and TBEST, we started out, we just talked about the agency Title VI policy. So that's the highest level of where we start actually inputting something for Title VI. So that's at this level. And so that flows into several different areas. We've already talked about the market analysis and interactive Title VI evaluation, where we have the route level Title VI, we have all the kind of market assessments in map layers and mobility areas and around stops. All of those are kind of interactive Title VI evaluation where we have the Title VI profile that we could show Title VI variables at various levels, right? So that would include jurisdictions or any selection or geography you have for TBEST or at the stop level. So all of these are we've covered. We've kind of looked at this and how TBEST does an interactive type of Title VI evaluation. So our next task is really to look at two different tools that are what we call workflow support tools. So if you remember from yesterday, we were looking at the TBEST Explorer and we had the workflow support tools folder. Underneath that folder are two tools. One is the Title VI analysis, this one, which is intended primarily for triennial reporting. So the maps and the reports are designed for inclusion into your triennial reports. It also calculates minority and low-income routes. And so if you're familiar with that procedure, it's a little bit involved in terms of how you assess which routes are considered to be minority routes or low-income routes. So it does that for you. It creates the maps and the reports for you. And all of them are easily accessible. All right, so we're going to go over that. We also have the Title VI disparate analysis, which compares two input scenarios and has a dashboard component where it will basically tell you, based on your Title VI policy parameters, if you have a disparate impact or disproportionate burden for your minority and low-income populations. So we'll take a look at all of those. Okay, so we looked at interactive. So we had our market assessment for and socioeconomic report Title VI profile. So here's the Title VI profile. We looked at the variables. We've seen that. We know that we have our Title VI variables here in our market analysis and also network accessibility. We haven't quite looked at that, but we have that coming up. So all of those are kind of available to us to easily assess where our Title VI distributions are interactively. Okay, so I mentioned the Title VI analysis workflow support tool. So that's this. And so basically this folder under workflow support tools is where we would execute and create Title VI analyses, right? And so it's a wizard-driven tool set to create FTA Title VI maps and reports primarily for triennial reporting. You input TBEST scenario networks, either existing or proposed, and the agency Title VI policy settings to create a Title VI analysis. And basically, it's a extract of the data that is stored under this folder. So it's basically a result set of data. And from that, you generate reports and maps from a console based on the FTA circular guidance. There are comparison reports to evaluate system, route, and jurisdictional differences between alternatives. So these being the alternatives, meaning these have input networks to them, and you can compare these, one or more, to each other. So you can then say, well, if you want to compare just on a geography to geography basis, the differences between, let's say our April 2015 scenario and our TDP constrained scenario, what are the differences in our Title VI variables? Then you can do that on a geography level here with this tool. So just keep that in mind if that is kind of your workflow for assessing Title VI. So the setup for this is very simple. You would just select a name as the a result set, the input transit system and network scenario. You would select the routes that you would want to input. And basically, it doesn't show it right here. We'll show it a little bit later, but you can specify whether you want the buffer that it creates and for whatever your policy is, the distance, to be a line or a stop buffer. So it would depend on the which type of route it is. So if it's an express route, by default, it's going to analyze the stops, right? Because really there's no service in between. Let's say it's a long express route. There's just a one stop at the beginning, one at the end. That's really all you need to assess. You don't need the line because you have no stops there between. So that is what it does by default. It will basically, if it's an express route, it will automatically categorize it with stops. Everything else is line. It's kind of considered a local route. All right. You can also input a jurisdictional or flex route boundary, such as from a local GIS data set or ArcGIS Online. It's optional to do that to assess. Let's say you have a mobility on demand data set. You want to assess the Title VI characteristics inside of it. You can use that tool, use that reference here, and assess the Title VI inside of a data set. All right, so once you're done, you are presented with a console where you have access to reports and maps that you can export to PDF, the reports, or other formats, and the maps can go out to an image or to ArcGIS Online or to mobile geodatabase. So during the analysis, it calculates the system percent disadvantaged population, so minority, low-income LEP. The route level percent disadvantaged populations calculates minority and low-income routes, minority and low-income revenue miles and stop arrivals, and the reports and maps are styled based on FTA circular guidance. So the styles of the maps aren't necessarily the most beautiful in the world, what I would say. I mean, they're fine, but they're really just meant for a kind of a reporting feature as here is what our general service is, what type of routes we have, where our LEP populations are. So, and then, once you get them out to different formats, you could change them if you want to in terms of how they look or are styled. But I think they're fine too. They could go right into a Trineo report if needed. So a couple of notes here about this map, what you're looking at. And one of the reasons that I suggest to people that they code their special generators and amenities, because those show up here in this map. They have hospitals, airports, transfer stations, high schools, universities. You can see them here in the map. So it just adds to what you would use for Trineo reporting if you were to code those into your network, right? So it just adds to it. And, so I would just another reason to make sure you're, doing some due diligence and coding those into your base network. Okay, here's the report console. So you have a map series that's over here on the left. So you can get to a route map, land use, minority distribution, low income, minority route designations, and other LEP or Title VI maps are all here. The reports, you can see there's some at the system level, they're at the route level. You have low income designations here, minority route designations, minority route service summary, and then jurisdictional summary. So if you input a GIS data set as an input to this wizard, it would give you the reporting here. Okay. So I mentioned the comparison reporting. So once you have kind of completed a couple of result sets, run through the wizard on your base conditions and some alternative condition, and you have two result sets or more, you can go to this, right click on the Title VI analysis and select Title VI comparison reporting and do reporting at the system route or jurisdictional level. So the report would look something like this, where you selected multiple analysis results. And this is transit system service area demographics. So for each one of these, it will summarize the population, the minority, limited English proficiency, and then low-income households here. So at the system level, it does this, right? And also at the route level and at the jurisdictional level. So here's a route level example where it's allowing you to do a route comparison filter, and you select the routes to compare. And it's really very similar to our scenario comparison tool, where you have scenario A, scenario B, and it gives you the percent change in this case, weekday revenue miles, minority revenue miles, low income revenue miles. So there's several variables here and different report types that you can run. So this is at the jurisdictional level. So you can actually compare a service change for your flex or mobility on demand routes, and then compare them across scenarios, right? So if you have a service change and you're changing your zones, what happens to your Title VI implications for that? So that's what this helps you with, is the ability to do that comparison between zone changes for mobility on demand. Okay, so the next tool that we have for Title VI is called the Disparate Analysis Workflow Support Tool. It operates very similarly to the other one, except this one takes two scenarios in as an input, and it directly compares them and evaluates disparate impacts of major system service changes to minority and low-income population using the people trips methodology. So just as a definition for that, it is basically when you're evaluating the buffer, the Title VI buffer population around a route, you multiply the route, or sorry, the people times the service trips, right? So however many trips you have, or to any one stop on a route, you multiply that by the people around that stop, around that route, and that's how you arrive at people trips. So it's the combination of basically people that are served times the number of trips. So it has the advantage of saying, well, if you decrease service, but don't change the actual alignment at all or the number of stops, you can still have a major service change if you don't change alignment and stops. So you want to make sure that you're capturing that in people trips, right? So I think this is kind of a more comprehensive way of assessing service changes relative to Title VI, is by using this methodology. So it notifies the user if there is a disparate impact, and it does that at the system level and at the route level. So again, it's just set up through a wizard, and a lot of these are just basic inputs that you can understand, and are a lot of times the system defaults. So you can see here our poverty level incomes, those are the defaults. our disparate impact threshold is the default. So unless you would change them here, it would just generally be what's the default in the system. So after you finish with the wizard, setting it all up, and here is the output dashboard. So basically the dashboard summarizes minority and low-income household disparate impacts. And the system level people trip service times people calculations are displayed in the dashboard. It notifies the user of system level and route level disparate impacts. And the service change map displays service increase and decrease areas for weekday, Saturday, and Sunday service. So that's kind of a cool detail here, is that for this map that it generates, it's going to kind of overlay services. So the new route service, meaning the new scenario, is in yellow. The existing route service, meaning the base conditions, are in gray, and they're kind of overlaid on each other, so you can see where you have removed service and where you have added it, both on a route or alignment level, and it pushes the service changes into the census block groups, so you can see that on a distribution level as well. And it does that for weekday and Saturday and Sunday. You just click on these buttons and it will change the distribution in the map to show the service changes for weekday, Saturday, and Sunday. Now you also have this route details button that allows you to go into the details of this at the route level for both minority population summary and low income. So when you do click the route detail, you are promoted to this route comparison filter, where at the route level, for the base conditions, let me annotate here, base conditions and change conditions. So this is Route 104. It exists in both. The people trips change here is 105%. So it increased the number of people that are served. I'm sorry, the trips times the people is 105%. 25% here for Route 105, minus 6.1, et cetera. So you can take a look at this and kind of determine where you have a big people trips change and determine how that equivalency to major service changes, et cetera, right? So you have this people trip change. You can either show a map of that, or you can create a report of whatever you have selected in this list. So if you do create a map, it will show the routes that you had selected in the map. It will show new route service, existing route service. In this case, minority population above the system average is shown in green here. And so you have an overlay of that. All right. Now, if you click the report button, you get this report, which is a very detailed and summarized report that is intended to calculate all of what you need to determine if you have a disparate impact or a disproportionate burden to minority and low-income populations. So, so you have let me annotate here, annual service trips. So this is the full annualized trips, the total population for each scenario. So that we're dealing with, in this case, March 2020, January 2021, the minority population, the percent minority, the population people trips. So here's where you're getting into people trips and then the minority people trips. So basically the comparison of these two is how you determine if you have a disparate impact that would exceed this 15%. So in this case, this agency, HART, their threshold is 15%, not 20%. So, so basically, if you're greater than or less than this 15% threshold, then you're potentially in disparate impact on that particular route change. So it just requires more investigation. So it's a great way to look at where you might be having a disparate impact and then make some mitigating changes in your network before, obviously before it goes into production or, it gets too far down the line. Okay, so let's do an exercise here and walk through this.
We do have one question in
Oh,
the
sure.
Q&A.
That's correct. Yes, Gary, the question is, I wanted to confirm that the Title VI analysis did not require parcel data and ridership modeling. That's right. It does not. Okay, so I'm on 7.3 Title VI analysis, exercise part 1, create a Title VI analysis using the TBEST workflow support tools. All right, so number 1 is within TBEST, close any open network scenarios. So I have one open and I will close it. In TBEST Explorer, right-click on the Gatorville Spring 2025 network scenario and select Workflow Support Tools, Title VI Analysis. So let's just collapse some of these so we're tidying things up. And go to Spring 2025 and go to Workflow Support Tools, Title VI Analysis. Just so you know, I'll just let you know, you can also go to Workflow Support Tools and right-click on Title VI Analysis and say New Title VI Analysis. It just won't forward you to a specific transit system and scenario. So same thing. All right, so we want to give this a name. It's going to be called Spring. Title VI, so Spring 2025, Title VI, the Gatorville transit system, Spring 2025 scenario. The buffer distance around each route is the default for the policy of 0.25 miles. Go to next. Define the system service area. It is also in the system policies of Alachua. Go to next. Again, also in our system policy settings, the defaults. So we don't want to change anything here either. All right, so here we get into the route selection. So we have, you can see each route is here, and we have a buffer data type. So we have a line on all of these. We could switch these to stops one at a time, right? So if we wanted to say, well, you know, we actually have an express route here, and it needs to be using the stops rather than the line, then we could do that, and we use that. So just so you know, that is there. But we're just going to select all of these and do select all and good enough and hit next. Okay. All right. All right, I'm on part 1 continued, item 7. In the jurisdictional FlexRoute input panel for the boundary input file, select the MOD zones shapefile. So within this lookup, we're going to click the lookup button and we're going to the local data from a mobile geodatabase or shapefile. And we have our MOD zones, right? So we've used this shapefile before, it's right here. And we just select OK. And we're going to do the grouping, which will be on name. So the name field is here. So it should look something like this. The MOD zones shapefile with the analysis grouping field equal to name. So we have that, go to next and finish. And it will run through and create the Title VI analysis. All right, so very quick in doing this, and it created the maps, it created the reports, and so we're ready to start investigating what we have here. So just in terms of the system level summary, we have a minority and low income summary. If we just click the open button, here is our service area total, which is Alachua County. The total population affected, total minority population, percent minority, and then total low income and percent low income. We also have it within the quarter-mile walk distance around our routes. So 2 levels here, service area total, quarter-of-a-mile walk distance totals. So you can see they are different, 42.5% for a minority population around routes, 35.2% for low-income populations as opposed to 27.8 for the system. All right. We also have LEP summary. So when we do LEP, because there are several languages involved and there's only so much room in the report, we kind of limit it to 5 different languages. So you can select which languages you want, or you can create multiple reports with different languages. So we'll just accept the defaults and we have the percent LEP for each one. So again, these are exportable. All of these reports you're generating can go out to PDF or HTML or Excel, etc. Right? Okay, so one of the really good reports here is this minority route designation. So if y'all are familiar with this methodology, basically the percent of revenue service miles in a minority area, if it's greater than 33%, 33.3%, then it's considered a minority route. So in this case, it's 24.6%, so it's false. This one is true and false. So it tells you which ones are considered to be minority routes and which ones are not, and the percent of the revenue service miles in the minority areas. And the minority areas are considered to be those census blocks and block groups where the percent of minority population is greater than the system average percent minority population. Same goes with low income route designations. Same kind of setup where you're determining if it is a low income or a minority route. We have the flex jurisdictional summary. So this is our MOD zone shapefile. So again, it summarizes the percent minority and low income within each of the zones. And then we have route level summaries as well. So route level minority and low income. So this is all bus and bus routes. So just a basic summary. And it gives you the data type used. So if you use line to summarize, then it will tell you the data type here. Okay. What else do we have? Service availability summary by mode. So here is just the different headways and the average stop spacing, service availability, route type. So minority and low income revenue miles. So these are the number of revenue miles that are in minority areas. So those areas that are where the percent minority is greater than the system average for weekday, Saturday, and Sunday, and giving as percentages. Okay. All right, so we can just open the route map. Very quick to open the route map. Here are our routes. We have obviously our university area in here. So super simple to generate this map and have it available to export or save as a report. And so of course, exporting takes it to ArcGIS Online or a local data export. All right, so how about minority population distribution? Looks like this. You can see the percent minority here, 0 to 11, 11 to 21. So it's giving you the thresholds. And then your route overlay and either special generators and amenities will also be overlaid. You can see the airport right here. So that is also coded as a special generator. Okay. Population plus employment per acre. So this is a combination of population and employment. And then you have LEP distribution. So this is total LEP. And then you can get into the individual languages. So here's Spanish. So here's Spanish LEP. All right. So really just kind of maps and reports you can export and utilize within your triennial reporting. As I mentioned, if you have multiples, you can do Title VI comparison reporting with the system and route level and jurisdictional level. Since we only have one, we can't do that. but certainly there's some documentation for that in the user guide as well. Okay, so let's go to exercise part 2, creating a Title VI disparate analysis. All right, so again, we're going to go to Gatorville and our network scenarios. Spring 2025, we're going to right click on that and select Title VI disparate analysis. So we already have our spring 2025 for Gatorville. They're going to call it TDP 2035 Title VI disparate. And our service change scenario is going to be our constraint plan, our TDP 2035 constraint plan. Our disparate impact analysis threshold is 20%, so that's our policy. And you could set this to 10% or whatever your policy would be. So this is a kind of a unique setup here where you can allow TBIS to calculate the system average, or you can say, I know the system average, and I just want it to be relative to what I say it is, not necessarily what TBIS says it is, because it could be a different number. And maybe you've been using, outside of TBIS, you've been using a certain number that you've worked with, and it's part of your overall policy. So you can certainly put in your own number here rather than having TBIS calculate it, and that it would honor whatever your system average percent would be, and then use it as a comparative tool for the analysis. We're going to just let TBEST analysis calculate it and use the buffer distance of 1/4 mile. Again, our service area defined by Alachua County, our poverty level incomes we've defined and are good with, and we just hit finish. All right, sometimes, here we go. All right, so what we see are a few things here. You have the minority population, and it's telling you the total population trip change in millions, the minority trip change, and then basically calculating if it's within the threshold of the 20% change as a minority impact, right? And it is within that range, so that we're all good. It says that there's not a disparate impact for minority population or for low-income households. So if you want additional detail on the inputs to this, you can click this button, and it will tell you the weekdays, Saturday, Sunday, and annual impacts in population trip change in millions, the service change impacts, and then the minority impact minus the system average minority distribution, which gives you your disparate change, your percent change. So basically we're at the annualized number is really what we're looking for, because we're taking into account all of the TBEST time periods. And so that is really the number we're looking at. So this gives you a little more insight as to what happened in terms of each service day that TBEST tracks in annually. All right, so if we go back to our input settings, a couple things we also see is that we see that it's green here on the map. And if you remember, this is where we added our Route 88. It basically came around to the elementary school here and went back downtown. So here's where we've added service, which is correct. This is what we should see. Now, if we switch this is weekday by default, we switch it to Saturday, there is no service change. Remember, we didn't make it a service change. So on Saturday, there is no service change. And on Sunday, and then here's our weekday again. So very easily, you can get information about this. And if I click on this, I can see all kinds of information about the census block, the population and households, population plus employment, average household size, low-income households, minority population. Here's the weekday service trips, and then for the base, and then for the alternative. So a lot of that information that we're actually is really valuable to us from a not just a route level, but now a geography level pushed into the block groups. So we have another map type that we can use and data source that we can use in addition to the routes themselves. And of course, you export this to ArcGIS Online. It goes out to online and works very well. All right, so so I'm on item 6 here. In the minority population panel, click the route detail button. So I will do that. Select routes to include in maps and report and interactively generate both. All right. So so there's different ways that you can do this. So you can actually, the people trips change. You can specify a percentage and select just those route comparisons where the people trips change is less than or equal to or greater than the number that you put in here. So let's say that your 20% is your threshold for a major service change. Then maybe you put 20% in here, and then less than 20% or less than negative 20%, or I guess less than greater than 20%. So that anything that shows up here would be a service change in the positive, and you might want to say less than 20% because you may be taking away service as well. So additive and subtractive are both can be major service change. So you may want to look for both of those. So you could do that here. We don't have any other service change other than our new Route 88, so it's not really showing up. But for any of these routes that we select, we can create a report. So here is we showed this earlier, the annual service trips, the population, minority population, percent minority, and if there's a disparate impact, it will show up here on the right-hand side. So very handy report, very detailed, especially as it relates to the people trips and calculating all that, and then calculating the percent disparate if it does exist. It also gives you report notes, which try to help you make sense of this calculation and really kind of drive you to where you can make an informed decision about a disparate impact or not. You can also click the show map. So very simply, we have a map of those routes that we had selected. And actually, there's both the existing service and new service. So it would show any kind of change here, as well as showing the overlay of minority population above the system average. If we switch this to low-income households, then our reports and maps are relative to low-income households. So now we're showing this is low-income equity as opposed to minority equity, right? And the same with the map. Now we're showing low-income households above the system average of 27.8. And remember, we asked if T-Best would calculate the system average, or if you input your own system average. If you input your own system average, it would definitely show up here, right? And in other places as well. Okay. I think that's it for the dashboard. And just like the workflow support tools for Title VI, you can just double click on this. It reopens anytime. Same with the dashboard for here. It stores it and you can reopen it at any time and create maps as you need to. All right, very good. All right, so let's go through the next topic. Operations analysis is pretty quick, and then we'll take a break and then finish out the rest of the topics for the afternoon.